what you gonna do tonight? I've got my mama's car keys and you've got a ticket to ride.
Hello, and welcome to Your Favorite Flick, a podcast where each episode we celebrate a movie that my guest loves. We aren't here to be critics, we're here to be fans. Today I'm joined by Sahil Godiwala, one of my oldest friends, to discuss Tinker, Tailor Solder Sa. This movie has been a shared passion of ours since the week of its release. It's embarrassing to even consider the number of stupidly nuanced texts we've sent back and forth on it over the years. This movie is one of clockwork precision, so in our inimitable style, we take a rambling, nearly incoherent approach to this conversation. I'm kidding. Mostly. We spend much of our time on character and performance in this one, especially that of Gary Oldman as George Smiley. I hope you'll find a lot to think on and enjoy. So Sahil Godiwala, welcome to the show for the first time.
This is going to be fun. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I begged you, so I don't know if you should say thank you for having me. So if you'd let the audience know, what movie are we here to talk about today?
The Tinker, Tailor Soldier Spy movie from, was it 2011?
I believe that's right.
So this is kind of a cheat code for me because it's based on one of my favorite books by one of my favorite authors from a series involving one of my favorite characters in literature, not named Sherlock Holmes. It's such a great constellation of everything. So even though a lot of our friends have given us hell over the years for liking a movie that they think is too slow or nothing happens, I think it is absolutely wonderful.
Let's put a finger on those friends because they'll be guests on the show very soon. Your brother, Nihal, is one of them. Our dear friend Andy is another.
Yeah, and even after we made the recommendation to them, don't see this as a James Bond movie, don't see this as Bourne Identity. This is a movie where you have to pay attention. There is no character looking at the screen, giving you the exposition of what 1973 London is supposed to be. It didn't work. They got bored halfway through. They started rage texting and saying, "You guys are the worst people on the planet. How could you do this to me?" It's a whole thing.
Can you give the audience a quick overview of what this movie's about, just so anybody who hasn't watched it before listening has a little context?
Sure. So Tinker, Tailor Soldier Spy is based on one of John le Carre's most famous books. It's lightly based on probably the greatest scandal in British intelligence history. It's a gentleman named Kim Philby, who was a Cambridge-educated war veteran, sold his country out to the Soviets, exchanged incredibly sensitive information that resulted in the death or capture and torture of many British agents who were deep cover in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc. So Tinker Tailor builds on that, where you have this group of people who are the most senior people in the British intelligence service, each individually and collectively being suspected of being the mole. And the movie basically takes you from the beginning, where the head of the agency and his lieutenant, Control and George Smiley, are unceremoniously booted out of the intelligence service, forced into retirement, and the second tier step in. And the remainder of the movie is about pulling those threads, trying to figure out how people knew there was a mole, who the mole was, what the mole is capable of doing, and how, this impacts their ability to function not only in their day job, but in this grand competition between the Soviet Union and the US.
I think it's worth sharing with the audience, and maybe the name of the show gives this away, but you and I consider this among the best movies ever made, and we are very much a minority opinion on that. So not that we have to lay it out in one sentence, but that's one thing I hope we get to today is why we feel this way.
Yeah, and I think there are 50 different things about this movie, and somehow this is the first movie that the director did in English. This is a movie that every certainly British person knows by heart, or the characters by heart, and somehow it just worked better than my wildest dreams And it's something that even on my ninth or 10th watch, I find something new that surprised me because the level of detail and the painstaking care that everyone has put into it to get the characters perfectly right is remarkable.
Painstaking care is right on with this movie. Many times where you and I have seen a movie, whether together or, separately as we've gotten older, Moulin Rouge springs to mind, where I think we both saw it the same weekend and called each other and were like, holy shit, I didn't know you could do that. Like, it's something entirely new, even though it draws on old tropes.
And even Tinker Tailor, I saw something that, and I've seen this movie 7, 8 times. I saw something that I hadn't seen before. I saw two things that I haven't seen before. And we'll get down to the level of obsessive detail, but it added something to the movie that gave me a much better understanding of the character. And I think more importantly, gave me a better understanding of how the actor, the director, props manager, whatever, approached who that person was. And the ways that people can do that, where they really understand the depth of who that person is, it's a remarkable thing because the detail, the period accuracy. I saw a trailer for the Odyssey movie recently, and people are yelling and screaming about the historical inaccuracies of the helmets that they're wearing. Great. I mean, that's fine. I don't think people were really going to try to put together Bronze Age helmets for a movie, but I can see people getting annoyed about that. This is almost the converse. The level of detail that people will put into something, not because they're trying to be perfectly accurate, but because they feel that's what their character would have used. That's how they would have done something in that time with whatever was available to them. It's that kind of care that people will put in, bordering on obsessive, that in many ways can make a movie.
For the audience, when Sahil says that's fine in that tone, he's being polite and he really means that's fucking stupid, just so you know. He's in his polite mode today, so we'll let him go. And yeah, that touches on something I was thinking about is there were so many characters to track in this movie. Granted, I've seen it a lot of times now, but from the very first viewing, it didn't seem confusing. I knew who the characters were, and I'm interested between Alfredson, the director, and Van Hoytema, the cinematographer, and the performers. What distinguishes them in that way? Why is this movie consistent from a character standpoint in a way that a lot of movies this sprawling might not be?
I think it's because the source material is immaculate. You read the John le Carre book, he doesn't force feed you or spoon feed you who these people are. There isn't this extensive pause in the action and say, and by the way, this is because of his childhood. You don't know much about the characters unless they tell you or they show you. And each one has their own little quirks. The way that Bill Hayden puts his glasses on is done in the exact same way by Colin Firth every time. It's a remarkable feat because the characters are very different and they're purposely different. And part of that is you're driven to figure out who the mole is for yourself, knowing that everyone, even the main protagonist, is a suspect. So you start looking for details, you start looking for ticks and little twitches that they have. And because the movie itself isn't heavily reliant on airplane chases or anything like that, the only action is with the character. So from the first moment you meet them and you start seeing them in different scenarios and circumstances, you learn more about them and you learn potentially what the justification or rationale for somebody to betray their country would be. Is it greed? Is it power? Is it lust? Is it betrayal? Is it misplaced loyalty? And Alfredson lets the characters speak for themselves.
When did you first see this movie? Did you see it in theaters?
I did. So I actually saw it in 2011, maybe 3 or 4 days after it opened. As I mentioned, it's one of my favorite books. It is the opposite of what I expected a spy novel to be, and then I read it and I was blown away. When it came out and I saw that it had that cast, I knew no matter what, it would be phenomenal. I saw it in the theater with a relatively respectful, quiet crowd in New York at one of these big AMC theaters. It was great because nobody went in expecting a Bond movie. Everyone went in watching with bated breath as things were put in front, and you would get not the gasp of, surprise, but, oh, wow, that's how it happened. And it was a terrific experience.
I saw it in the theater as well. I think you may have actually seen it before me and told me you have to go see this. I would say my theater was not very full, like not quite empty, but near it. And it seemed like the reaction was bored in my theater, unfortunately, which I think was a not uncommon reaction and part of this movie's underperformance. But I was drawn in just right away. I was like, oh, this is my shit right here. And it may not be anybody else's.
It was built for a certain audience. Even the violence is off screen. It's not designed for jump scares. It's designed for the slowest of slow burns. And it takes a certain patience and familiarity to get through what some of our friends have said. Nothing really happens. It's thinking, it's putting pieces together. Andy described it as it's as exciting as watching somebody put a jigsaw puzzle together. But it's perfect. It does exactly what it tells you it's going to do without flourishes. And the fact that it's willing to get down into minutia to explain just how, their world works, audience be damned, is kind of a bold move.
I was really thinking about watching this today. Griffin Newman, who's the co-host of the podcast Blank Check, he often cites the idea that a great movie teaches you how to watch it within the first 5 minutes, which is something that really resonates with me. And it feels profoundly on point with this movie. So I'm interested in how you think those first two scenes, first in Controls Flat and then in Hungry, how does that inform your viewing? How does that prepare you for the movie as a whole?
Well, one, the scene in Controls Flat is gross. I mean, he lives in filth. This is one of the most powerful people in the United Kingdom and the world. And his apartment is a disaster. And for somebody that has to have a meticulous mind, there's ashtrays all over the place. There are food cartons. He's wearing this ratty bathrobe. And he brings in Preto, and he explains to him something. There's a mole. I need you to go do this, and I need you to do that. And your mission in Hungary is to pull somebody out who's a high-ranking general who may know the identity. So you're drawn in because it's not the perfectly manicured three-piece suit, professionals doing professional looking things. This is the grimy, ratty reality of what, not that I know what the reality is, but this is the reality. You go to this person who is the boss of bosses, and he is in a sty. And Frito in Hungary, it's kind of a neat set piece because you see his suspicion, you see his alertness, you at no point think he's safe, and at no point he thinks he's safe. And the little details, like the mother nursing in the corner, the old lady looking out and about to draw the shutter, gives you that sense of paranoia and gives you the sense that the paranoia is justified. You just don't know why yet. And then the waiter comes out, he drips the sweat. Aprito knows immediately something's wrong, leaves his bag, starts walking away, and gets shot in the back. So from those first two pieces where you've got the grime and what you think might be just kind of a sloppy, careless person to this mission that goes horribly wrong, it starts off with the idea that maybe these guys aren't as good as they should be. Maybe they're not top of their game. I mean, this should not have been as much of a disaster as it were, because this is James Bond. Like, these are the people who save the world. And it's a great way to start a movie that's about care and detail and really careful movement through dangerous spaces, because it was not careful. The details Greedo picks up on, but everything else goes away. And the careful movement through space ends up with him dropping back.
And I think with things like the bead of sweat, we learn how important every shot's going to be in this movie. That we better pay attention to every insert because it all factors in, right? It's a combination I can understand being maddening for some people, because to have the combination of very slow, but you better not blink, it can be a trying combination. I do wonder to a degree if seeing this in theaters was a huge advantage in coming to appreciate it, because it is the kind of thing where if you watch at home for the first time, any distractibility during this movie is likely to really color your viewing experience compared to a theatrical experience, I think.
And I think the single most important person in the movie, Carla, is in the second scene. And when you see the waiter, when Preto looks in the restaurant, you see the waiter watching him and then slowly looking away. Carla's there, face unseen, but you find out later it's Carla. So knowing that control was right, that general was there, that person who may or may not have wanted to defect had set up everything exactly the way that it had gone, is a detail that kind of slips while you're watching it for the first time, because you don't realize the importance of that set piece. And then when you do, and you see him, closer to the end of the movie, you realize exactly not just the detail of it, but there isn't a wasted character. And even the mom who gets shot, you see her baby held by the soldier a little bit later. It's a surprisingly small cast, but everyone has a purpose, everyone has a use, and even the extras play a pretty big role.
They come down at one point. Well, Bill in particular comes down to check out the new girl, Belinda the blonde. And then when Gilliam, Benedict Cumberbatch, is leaving after a particularly tense and amazing sequence, it is Belinda who runs to give him his bag. And we've seated this person, and I'm not saying there's any great symbolism in that, but just in making it such a rich world and each person matters, that felt significant.
And it's also the claustrophobia of it. When you're in the elevators and there are these tiny, cramped spaces, when you're in the archives and you've got 2 feet of room maneuvering between stacks, and when the same people pop up over and over again, you feel the tightness of this space and you feel the characters aren't wasted. Belinda showing up again is a terrific example, because she's not a bit player. She actually kind of helps save the day and gives them some of the information that they need to help ferret out who the mole could be. And I think, we can talk about Smiley for hours. He is an absolutely perfectly written character. And the way that Oldman puts pieces together and makes Smiley even more of a master is one of the standout parts of the movie. The way that Oldman turns Smiley into the most bizarre superhero you can think of. There is nothing remarkable about Smiley except his mind, and that's it. And it's really something, because his ability to spot weaknesses and then exploit them makes somebody like Esterhaus, even Alanine, so obvious to him that whatever their betrayals are, it doesn't matter, because Smiley knows that they're capable of it.
Let's focus on that central performance of Oldman as Smiley. What does he do? Saying Gary Oldman's great in a movie is like saying the sun's bright. It's almost a given. What does he do in this performance in particular that is so breathtaking?
Oh gosh. So I'll steal from the book again. There's this wonderful, wonderful line that Anne Smiley tells Bill Hayden about George. And she said, he's like a swift. He lowers the temperature of the room to meet his, so he doesn't waste any warmth. And I remember reading that almost 30 years ago and just thinking, That is a remarkable thing to say about your husband. He's cold-blooded, he's passionless, he doesn't speed up. And Oldman's performance is, I think, remarkable for me in three scenes. One, when he's swimming. I remember watching that and thinking, who the hell swims with glasses on? And he's in Hempstead Heath. It's a pretty busy body of water. There are hundreds of people. You're going to knock into somebody. And I've thought about this over the years. That means, A, he knows exactly what stroke he's going to do because he's not going to dip his head in the water. B, he's doing that so he never loses eyesight. And he's got thick glasses. And C, it's the most practical thing to do when you are somebody who's paranoid about everything, still trying to think your way through. That scene alone, with him just kind of slowly moving across the water, it's almost like a turtle. He's got this shell, he's got this armor. It's not his suit, it's his glasses. That lets him see the world at all times. The second scene is where he's talking to Gwilym about his encounter with Carla. It's a soliloquy, basically, where he's talking about the interrogation in Delhi, and Smiley kind of gets into a fugue state. And Oldman's ability to take Smiley out of that 1973 flat and move him back 10, 15 years and show him exactly how he was at that point, still passionless, but making mistakes. And it's in that moment that Smiley, I think, realized Carla knew his weakness. Carla exploited his weakness because Smiley told him and showed him his weakness. And it was his own fault. That scene alone was remarkable acting. And the third is
If I could jump in just 1 second there, to be explicit for people listening, his weakness relates to his wife and his love of her slash possessiveness slash betrayal. And he hands Carla a lighter that is engraved from his wife. And there is the idea of how would a spy as careful as Smiley carry something so personal, much less hand it to an enemy spy?
and not notice that Carla never used it in front of him. Because remember, he said he gave him a full pack of cigarettes. Carla handed him back unsmoked, kept the lighter. And I think that's where it kind of clicked that not only was his weakness Anne, but his weakness was something that Carla knew. And Carla created the blind spot, which is Smiley is aware of Anne's affair with Hayden. And of course, Smiley would not then focus on Hayden as the mole because he knew that he knew. His thinking wasn't clear because there was some whatever Smiley's version of passion is. The other scene that I always think about is when he turns his head, where he's sitting in the safe house and he hears sounds coming up the stairs. It's that cold reptilian movement where it's like these subtle inch by inch shifts, not anything that would make a sound, not anything that would give away any emotion or feeling, but his ability to just freeze, shift, let the temperature of the room get to where he was, because he knew that the mole was coming up the stairs. He had a 99% degree of certainty who it was. He had the gun drawn. He had his shoes off. He had been prepared for God knows how many hours for this moment. And there was no enthusiasm. There was no stress. It was just a simple turn of the head. And at that point, he didn't know if it was one person or 100. He didn't know anything other than what his mind had told him. And he didn't react with a degree of emotion. And it's that kind of the way that Oldman, who can be a scenery chewer, can be loud, think about The Professional and him popping the amphetamines, the way he turns the volume all the way down to something almost imperceptible, where there isn't a sound and there's no bead of sweat, there's no give. And at that moment, any person would have been stressed out of their mind.
The physical stillness in this performance really strikes me. Even when we see Smiley walking, his arms are either behind his back or they just kind of hang at his side with very little movement, because it's like Oldman wants to move only the absolute necessary body parts at any given moment. I also think of when he sees Anne outside with who we later learn is Bill outside the party, or we presume is Bill. I guess in the book, we know she has affairs with a series of men.
Mm.
The fact that his reaction, we see some distrust on his face, but his biggest reaction is he just pushes his glasses up on his nose. Like there's nothing big or physical, even in that moment of ultimate betrayal.
And the glasses are a huge part. The first thing he does after he's fired is he goes to the ophthalmologist and gets a new pair of glasses, because he now has to see the world in a different way. That's his crutch. That's his talisman. It's the thing that he cannot be without. And the only time you see him without his glasses is that moment when he wakes up the first day after and he puts on the pair. This is a completely throwaway scene in the movie, but when they pick up Mendel for the first time, he's tending his bees in the apiary. Gillum and Mendel are in the front seat. A bee hangs out, and so the two of them are in the front seat, kind of batting it away. Smiley doesn't move a muscle. His head never moves. And when the bee gets into the back seat, he just simply rolls down the window. And even then, you see no movement from the shoulder down. The bee flies out and he rolls it up. Perfect economy of motion, not a waste of energy. He did exactly what he had to do.
You mentioned the contrast to Gwillem there, who, as precise as he can be, is a little manic in that scene. And that's something we see in his character, a bit of manic energy that contrasts to the Preto scene of the bird in the classroom and him taking it down with the cricket bat. And he is, in a way like Smiley, he's so precise, but his precision is one of violence, whereas Smiley's is a passive precision.
Prideaux, as a scalp hunter, is violent by nature. He's sent in to clean up messes or create messes. So his ability to turn it on and turn it off makes him the right person for messy missions. But when you think about Smiley turning hundreds of Eastern Bloc KGB people over to the West, Smiley has a skill set that is also beyond what we see. His interrogation of Esterhaus, for example, is masterful in that it preys on the fear, the anxiety, the betrayal. You are loyal, but look what you did to control. And he knows the right buttons to press, which is why I think that scene where he talks about Carla and realizes what he has given Carla is that much more important, because in a sense, Smiley gave Carla the gun to point at British intelligence. That's where you see the set of skills that Smiley has, where he's able to lever the loyalty, the anxiety, the betrayal, the outsider status to get what he wants from Esterhaus. Once again, knowing that Esterhaus is 99% not the right person, getting that confirmation from him, seeing that Esterhaus is too weak to pull something like this off, and that he's the bagman, he's the middleman. And I think that's where he gets the confirmation he needs, uses the set of skills that he has, whether that you call that scene violent or nonviolent, in an incredibly threatening way. You have a plane right there ready to take him somewhere terrible.
By the way, he never mentions deporting him or where he would send that plane. It is the mere presence of a plane for a refugee that is terrifying as can be.
It's using all of the things he knows about Esterhaus against him perfectly. And there's a certain cruelty to it, because putting somebody in an abject state of terror, but you don't see any glee, you don't see any emotion at all from Smiley, other than just kind of pure competence. He knows exactly what he has to say in the order he has to say it to get what he needs.
I wouldn't say his attitude reflects this. With what we know of Smiley, you sort of suspect he doesn't like having to do this. Like he knows Toby's not guilty, but he knows this is the play. Right. And ultimately, he's a guy who makes the play.
And the only thing he needs from him is the address of the safe house. That's it. And instead of just saying it, he wants to put Toby in a position where he has no choice but to be honest. Because if he's not, he knows Smiley will know it. And Smiley will put him on that plane, wherever that plane is going. He has no idea, but he knows what Smiley's capable of, and that he will do it without a second thought, because Smiley doesn't have second thoughts.
Control goes through the chess pieces, and he's got each suspect marked on a chess piece, and he gives them the names from the titular poem. How does thinking of Smiley as Beggar Man inform your reading of him in the movie?
The other parts of it are rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. Smiley's not rich. He's not poor. He's not a thief. The beggar man is somebody who is desperate for something, and it's something that he doesn't have. And I think Control, more than anyone else, knows about Smiley and Carla's not just mutual admiration for each other. You see Carla as the queen on the other side as the chess piece, and Smiley is the queen on the other side of the chessboard. There's something that they want from each other. You see Smiley as not somebody who is enamored of, or even as this grand, the war was the greatest time ever. We have to get back to the UK standing in the war. But Smiley has something missing. Carla knows what that is. And so maybe it's something that Control thinks about. What is Smiley's weakness? Why would he give something away? What is he pleading to Carla for? That was my thinking about it, because he doesn't fit the others. Hayden's very well dressed. He's Tailor. There's some that just kind of work.
One brilliant move of this movie in the casting is that almost everybody is cast to type, and the movie uses that to its advantage with the fact that we don't have to spend so much time with these supporting characters to get who they are. I'm interested in how you feel about that with a few of the supporting characters. What do the actors bring to bear?
I think it's perfect casting. There is no doubt that Roy Bland was muscle gone to pop. There is no doubt that Percy Allenine is a conniving little man pretending to be big. And Toby Jones does a great job of showing just the scuzzy underbelly of...
Yeah, Toby Jones can play a good guy. I've seen him do it very well, but your default to Toby Jones on screen is, this guy's up to something.
Yeah, and he's so perfectly sneaky. And even at the end, when he's walking in the rain without the umbrella, he gives Smiley a quick nod, acknowledging that you won, I lost. But it's the Arthurian thing where you've got the template. You know who these people are because they tell you. And they tell you because you're one of that close cadre of people. All of them have known each other for years. They've known each other in awful, awful times. And so there's this constant, almost total honesty that each of the actors portrays really well. Bland cannot keep control of his temper. When he's in with Lacan, he says too many things too quickly. He's too quick to anger. And that's how Roy Bland should be, because that's muscle that is no longer muscle. John le Carre has a small role in it. He plays one of the party goers right before they sing the Soviet national anthem. But you find all these little people who are there for just a particular reason, and it's just really well done.
Down to even things like Gwillem's lover, who he's breaking up with, and he's not even on screen when he's delivering his dialogue. Yet it's very moving in a way that I think informs Gwillem's character as well. I just like saying that name too, so I'm probably bringing him up in part.
But even his relationship with Smiley is fantastic, because, and Cumberbatch does a really good job of showing it's not just a mentor-mentee, superior-inferior type role. Gwillem has 100% trust in Smiley. And it's potentially because Smiley knows more about him than he does. Right before he breaks up with his lover, when Smiley said, if you have loose ends, do it. It's a pointed, every word hits like a hammer. Gwillem knows exactly what he has to do, and he does it. And he does it wearing the same clothes. So he went from that meeting to the apartment. No wasted time. He heard it. He knew what he had to do, didn't second guess it, felt emotion, which is why he and Smiley are different people, but he didn't question it.
And twice before that, Smiley's asked him to potentially sacrifice his career by taking huge risks by stealing information. And he's the good soldier in the best sense of that phrase both times, because he believes in his general. He believes he's being sent to do the right thing for the right reasons. I want to make sure we don't miss talking about Tom Hardy's role, because I don't know that anybody else could have pulled off Ricky Tarr the way he does. And I'm interested in your take on that performance.
So his ability to balance, first of all, it's convincing. He's sensual. He's able to fall in love. He's able to hold a woman's interest and to carry a torch. It was terrific. And Tom Hardy, I think, is one of those actors that can flip in and out of very violent, passionate roles and then fall back into this almost state of grace. And Ricky Tarr was kind of the catalyst that moves it from a set piece. You always go back to the chessboard analogy. You set up the defense, you set up who is moving where, and then you move the bishop out of nowhere and you attack. And that's what Tarr does. And he does it in a way that is sloppy, is a mess. He gets people killed and he just creates this disaster behind him. But he's ingenious enough to move out, in, and then into hiding. And he goes to the person that he knows will protect him in a way that nobody else can. So there's a certain kind of cunning that Hardy brings to it that almost obviates the mess. He gets people killed, including British agents. It's that scene in Istanbul where he walks in and he sees his boss's throat slit. Irina sees Boris in the bathtub, but he knows what he's done. He knows that he has messed up big time.
Yeah.
And he runs.
I love two things you identified there that I was thinking about. The sensuality of Hardy. He almost can't help that, even in his most brutal roles. There may be roles where he's tried to turn it off and can't help that. But also that he is showing us a different form of intelligence. He's showing us a cleverness and a street type intelligence that's very different from Smiley's. And it's very sloppy. It's imperfect, but it keeps him alive. And we see his deep feeling for Irina, that it's not just about a fling for him. He thinks this girl's special. And as much as that he feels honor bound to her, that he promised to be the keeper of her secrets and she's been recaptured by the Russians. I think there's also, with that subplot, an amazing economy of storytelling that we then see her murdered in front of Prideaux as part of his torture. We hit a conclusion of that story within the telling of his story. And that leaves me to another thing I want to make sure we don't miss is in the book, Prideaux is more of a co-protagonist with Smiley. We spend more time with him at the school. His whole arc is kind of its own thing. In the movie, we get a lot less time of that. And I'm interested in how you think the movie serves him as a character and serves his arc.
So I think it's fun because Prideaux and Ricky Tarr have the same job. They're scalp hunters. They're bad men who do bad things. They're also the two people that actually have love for somebody and maybe something, although Tom Hardy does a great job of pulling back from the loyalty to the country and to the circus and saying, I want a family. I don't want to end up like you guys. But I think Prideaux in the movie has to serve a purpose. He has to start the movie and he has to finish the movie. And his arc is when he starts the movie, it's this one-on-one with control. It's him being skilled enough and trusted enough to take on this pretty hairy mission. And at the end, when he goes to Sarah to kill Hayden, I can't imagine anyone walking into a maximum security prison housing one of the most notorious spies being able to get within rifle range and just killing him. So whatever Predu did to get to where he was at the end is what he relied on in the beginning, his instincts, his abilities, his dead eye. But Predu in the book, like you said, has much more of a role in driving kind of the love angle of it, love of country, love of person, love of Bill Hayden. And the ultimate betrayal in the book is Hayden and Predu. And in the movie, it's kind of aesthetic. Hayden is driven by the ugliness, the gauche aspects of the West. In the book, he's driven by the fact that England has lost its standing. It's lost its empire. It's not where it was. It's this middle ground between the two great powers, and it's being manipulated and being given little morsels. And, Hayden is driven by the loss of empire. He has this great line in the book, "I was trained to rule, and look at what I'm doing now." And I think Predu kind of serves that purpose as well. Hayden has dominion over Predu. He has his undying love and affection. And Predu tells Hayden the ultimate things that get Predu shot, that get a bunch of other people killed, not realizing that he was the mole until it's too late.
I think that's very interesting. We may differ a little bit about this. I think your reading of Hayden's motivations in the book is spot on. Not saying I think you're wrong in the movie, but I read it a little differently in the movie. I buy his explanation about things being gauche. I really feel like with the way Firth plays him, he's kind of a dilettante playboy game player. And I feel like he did it just for the of it.
Yeah.
That
He's bored.
Right.
And this is where Colin Firth's ability to play smarmy, it's spot on. Because like the little winks and grimaces, and when he rings the bell at Belinda, at no point do you believe Firth is a serious person, except he is so high up in the echelon, he has to be good. He has to be good at what he does. But I think his explanation to Smiley is a way of almost seeking forgiveness, because Smiley would not be able to understand the kind of betrayal that he did in the book. And he didn't understand in the book because, of course, we're on the downswing of the empire. It was by design. Our masters are the ones who gave up the colonies, who did this and did that. In the movie, that's not good enough for Smiley. Smiley would not believe that as a reason, because it's easier to say something like it's the aesthetic of it, because that's something Smiley did not understand.
Right.
And his one show of emotion in the entire movie is, "I'm not a bagman. What are you then?"
Right.
His level of fury at the fact that Hayden, who had so much, could not actually put himself in that square peg that 99% of the world would kill to be in.
Do you read Jim's killing of Bill more as vengeance, more as mercy, or as something else altogether?
I think it's a combination of many things, because their relationship was complicated. They were lovers, they were friends, they played sports together, they probably went to school together. Hayden also set him up and got him out. So there's a certain amount of thanks that he owes Hayden, even though he's stuck teaching in the middle of nowhere. But I think what was really interesting about that ending is it was a mercy killing. It was vengeance, because he knew that he was shot because Hayden blew his cover. He knew that he was tortured horribly because Hayden blew his cover. And he knew that Hayden did it all knowing what was going to happen to him. So I think there was some vengeance. There's also the idea that this guy is going over to our greatest enemy with a lot of information still. And Credo was, as a scalp hunter, he's somebody who knows the messy stuff. He knows what probably could await Hayden if he goes over to the USSR and they just say, actually, no. It's one of the more complicated parts because it is love. And love had motivated a lot of their relationship. Then anger, vengeance became part of it. But it also ties with the Ricky Tar Irina thing where the object of your love has to die in order for you to move the plot along.
The fact that they allow them to make eye contact plays into Mercy being a big part of it. Not to say that's the only reading, but it certainly reads strongly for me. Then a really interesting choice to me is that they allow the movie to end on such a note of triumph with Smiley's ascendancy that feels a little, not in a bad way, but feels a little off kilter from the rest of the movie. And I'm interested in your thoughts on that final sequence of him entering and eventually kind of taking control's seat.
It's funny because I saw that as kind of a sine wave. Plus, you've got Julio Iglesias singing La Mer, singing a French song that is a classic. So there's still kind of this odd man out type aspect of it. But you see Greedo and Hayden kind of hitting the wall. You see Connie Sachs still stuck where she is. You see that nice little moment where Gillum and Smiley walk by each other. And then you see him sitting down in the seat where it's, to your point, it's a little uplifting. It's a little everything in its right place. But it's the only way that I think Smiley would have allowed the movie to end. Because he now knew enough information to bring down certainly Layton, certainly the minister. And I think his final parlay was, I get the seat. The people that I choose to be at my round table are mine. And he also wears the very dark suit, almost the funereal outfit, which it shows a certain formality that he didn't have before. He was he was never shabby, but the muted grays, the tan overcoat, and then coming in with a dark gray 3-piece, that's the boss. That's the person you take your orders from.
I believe you said early on there were 2 things you noticed this time that you hadn't noticed before. You want to give us some insight on that?
So the first is as they run the opening credits and you see Smiley and Control walking out, the production company is called a Carla production. Which I've seen this movie many times. I never noticed it. And I don't know if that's a real company or not, but Karla. And the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, that works so well because everything in that movie is because of Carla putting it together, which I thought was a wonderful little snippet. The second thing is when Control signs his letter of resignation with the C, he uses a Parker 51 fountain pen. And the Parker 50, yeah, I mean, I'm a fountain pen fanatic. The Parker 51 is what the Queen uses. It is what royalty uses to sign off on laws, edicts, whatever. And it's been the official pen of the Windsors forever. Controls is a beaten old pen. And I kept thinking that's something you would get from the king or the queen and you would treasure. And they're very noticeable. They have a distinct shape. And the way that he takes it out, puts it back into its case at the end, gave me a little bit more of an insight into Control. Here's somebody who, we see him as the war veteran. We see him as the old man. We see him as whatever. But at some point, he was important enough to have the audience with the king or the queen. And at some point, whether it was in the 40s, under Elizabeth II's father, whether it was under Elizabeth II, he got that from them. And I'd never seen that before, and I thought it was just a great little touch.
So before we wrap up here, for people that are fans of this movie or turned on to this movie by listening to this episode, what are some other movies you'd recommend?
Well, so one is what I would say is probably the obvious corollary, and that's The Spy Who Came In from the Cold. That's Richard Burton. I think it was 1965, based on a John le Carre novel. Probably it's the novel that made le Carre famous and allowed him to quit his job as a spy master to be a full-time writer. It's really well done. It's kind of a classic, grungy, upend the whole, and it's a contemporary of Dr. No, but it's really a good and faithful adaptation of the book. The Tinker Tailor and The Spy Who Came In From the Cold stand out as being really faithful to the source. The other is another movie that is based on a phenomenal book, and that is Remains of the Day. Another slow burn, another character-driven, dialogue-driven, slowness and care of the movements type movie with Anthony Hopkins, Christopher Reeve in my favorite role of his, and Emma Thompson, based on the Ishiguro book. It is really and truly one of those movies that sticks with you because it's about loyalty and misplaced loyalty. It's about betraying yourself and your true loves and instincts for the ideal of service, the idea of service to your master. For Tinker Tailor, it's the United Kingdom. For Remains of the Day, the Lord of the Manor, and what you give up for it. That movie's got to be early 90s, mid 90s. But I remember seeing it and just thinking, I hadn't read the book first, which I usually try to do before I see a movie. But just thinking, like, if the dialogue in the book is half as good as what I just heard in the movie, this is a masterpiece. And sure enough, it's a masterpiece.
So, well, I think we got a lot of great stuff there. Thank you for being with us today.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. I will recommend Tinker Tailor to everyone, even Andy and Nihal, who owe it another watch.
Maybe they'll watch it for this episode, but probably not.
Probably not. All right, sir. Take care.
That's it for this one, folks. I'm Brad Glazer. I host, produce, and edit the show. The folks helping me make it happen are Rich Man, Chris Bravender, Poor Man, Brad Kaufman, Beggar Man, Jeffrey Glazer, and Thief of my heart, Julia Mock. The music you hear at the beginning of this show and now is by my friend Richard Bates and his band, The Huns. That's Hons. You can find The Huns music on Bandcamp. Check them out and check out Richard's new album, Bates and Sons and Daughters, as well. This Sunday, we bring you the long-awaited return of opening episode guest Chris Bravender to discuss Good Will Hunting. Chris and I both consider ourselves boy geniuses, even well into our 40s, so this one retains a special resonance for us. Please follow, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, all the things. You can follow us on Instagram at Your Favorite Flick, on Letterboxd at Favorite Flick, or shoot us an email at yourfavoriteflick@gmail.com. Huns, take us out.
Same days brushing up on poetics. That's 14 times 365 inflection.